It all begins with a news report from a reporter named Michael about a siege of an embassy that has already lasted 20 hours. He reports that the villains are demanding the release of 20 imprisoned members, as well as $100 million in cash. At that moment, a gloved hand prepares for the action that is about to take place. Dorna's special forces are called in because the hostages are in danger if their demands are not met. With negotiations stalled, the government decides to send a special team to resolve the situation once and for all. But as soon as the soldiers try to storm the building, a large explosion occurs, and the reporter wonders if they are all right. A soldier approaches his fallen lieutenant, who realizes with pain that they have stepped on a landmine. The soldier then shouts for everyone to watch out for more mines, but it's too late as a burst of gunfire begins. The team members are hit head-on by a hail of bullets, taking everyone by surprise. One of the men warns that it's an ambush, and that there are at least 20 enemies shooting at them. The captain sees that his men are wounded, and orders all units to retreat to rescue their comrades. Meanwhile, the villains watch with a smile, and one of them reveals that there are hundreds of mines in the courtyard. Another man boasts that the building is now a fortress, and that you'd have to be a ghost to get inside. Upon hearing this, one of his companions becomes frightened and asks him not to joke about ghosts. The man admits he is afraid, and says they must have heard rumors about a legend. This legend is Geist, an autonomous S-class agent who always succeeds in any mission, no matter how difficult. They say that during the siege of the British embassy a month ago, the only terrorist who survived said that all his friends were already on the ground. Geist is a master of sabotage capable of disarming and planning any type of bomb. He is also an expert at neutralizing important targets with precision and without being detected. He concludes by explaining that this agent leaves no trace and is known only by his code name, Geist. One of the villains starts laughing, saying that Geist is just an urban legend and that his friend is crazy for believing it. The man who is scared agrees and says he feels like an idiot just for having talked about the subject. He goes on to say that even if someone like that existed, but before he finishes, a blue blur cuts through the darkness. With that, he concludes the sentence by stating that it would be impossible to invade the fortress while his friend is lying on the ground. The man turns around, startled upon seeing his companion on the ground, and asks what's wrong, completely confused. With a look of terror on his face, he realizes that something terrible is happening around him. Suddenly, a blue blade appears at his neck, and he wonders what it is without seeing the attacker. Soon after, the man who doubted the legend is struck and can't even scream in pain. A third terrorist sees the scene and begins shooting desperately in all directions. He shouts, asking where the intruder is, while continuing to fire into the dark without hitting anything. At that moment, his face fills with terror as he realizes that the legend might be real after all. He wonders if Geist is the ghost in question while surrounded by blue figures that attack him mercilessly. On the floor, we see the marks of the quick and silent confrontation that just took place in the hallway. Central Command tries to contact Team 3, but receives only silence in response. We then see Geist standing, holding the radio, while the voice on the other end asks what happened. The protagonist reveals his face from beneath the HUD while ignoring the radio calls with the bodies on the ground. The scene shifts to the main hall, where the other villains and the hostages are gathered. We see two hostages tied up and gagged, looking frightened by the tense situation. The group leader picks up the radio and shouts for Team 3 to respond immediately. Then one of the men informs them that it's no use because they've also lost contact with Team 5. The leader asks about the other teams, and a man answers the radio but can only hear desperate screams from Team 2. Through the radio, they hear cries for help and shouts from men who are unable to hit the mysterious enemy. This shocks the group's leader, who wonders what on earth is happening to his men. He then yells for his men to hurry and protect the main hall at all costs. The same man tries to warn that the intruder is about to arrive but cannot finish the sentence. Suddenly, a blue figure crosses the room and strikes several villains at once with a single blow. The other men watch the scene in sheer terror, unable to comprehend the speed of the attack that just occurred. Cries of pain echo through the place as the villains desperately wonder who this guy is. One of the villains panics and starts shooting wildly, trying to hit the hooded intruder. But the man shouts that he can't hit him because he doesn't look human and dodges all the bullets. In the blink of an eye, the protagonist appears in front of the shooter, ready to finish the job. We see up close the protagonist's eyes glowing with an intense blue light, revealing his power. This leaves the terrorist paralyzed with fear upon seeing those supernatural eyes staring back at him. The protagonist's hand glows with blue energy as he prepares for his next move. Like lightning, he passes by the last man in the group, finishing the job with speed and precision. With his eyes still gleaming, the protagonist displays a cold and determined gaze towards his next target. The last survivor on the ground sees the protagonist's figure approaching for the final blow. He can barely breathe as he watches all his comrades lying on the ground surrounding the invader. Geist then leaps toward the last enemy, with his energy blade ready for the final attack. Seeing this, the group leader screams in anger and begins shooting relentlessly at the protagonist. But the bullet stops in mid-air right in front of the protagonist's face, who blocks it with a barrier of blue energy. The villain's leader is surprised, and with the weapon smoking, he wonders if he managed to hit the target. Suddenly, the man is terrified to see Geist appear unharmed right behind him, his eyes glowing intensely. In an instant, a blue blade cuts through the air in a swift and deadly movement against the last enemy. Lying on the ground, the leader can barely breathe as he stares at his tormentor with a look of shock. With his last breath, he whispers the name Geist while the protagonist watches him with a cold gaze. A security camera recorded the scene, showing the officer standing amidst the terrorists' bodies. The protagonist then turns around and looks directly at the camera, realizing he is being watched. We see a close-up of his determined gaze through the recording, showing that the mission is not yet over. Suddenly, a white-haired man appears and claims to be a big fan of the protagonist and his mysterious side. He goes on to say that there is no man alive who does not admire him, and that is why the current situation is a shame. The scene reveals the protagonist wounded and on his knees as the man laments having to witness his defeat. The villain boasts that the agent was defeated by his cowardly and despicable strategy. With a bruised face, the protagonist stares at the ground as the man in white declares his defeat. The man shows a brooch on his suit and says that the ghost he so admires was influenced by a human emotion. He picks up a gun and says it's disappointing to see the legend fall so pathetically. The white-haired man then points the gun at the protagonist's head, preparing for the final shot. With a sadistic grin, he asks if Geist has any last words before his end. Even with the gun pointed at him, the protagonist smiles and tells him not to think he can eliminate the ghost so easily. The villain is surprised to hear him speak and questions whether that smile is one of confidence or just frustration. The man in white mentions the child Geist saved, and this seems to unsettle the bound protagonist. He then fires the weapon without hesitation, directly into the agent's head, who remains silent for a moment. With a furious look, the protagonist raises his head, showing that he is still alive and ready to fight. The villain then says that for the end of a legendary man, that was quite ordinary and uninteresting. The scene fades to black, and the protagonist wonders where he is, feeling his consciousness clear but his body strange, as if he were in the rain. He remembers being hit in the head and thinking it was over, but now he's somewhere else with a strong feeling of anger. The man's irritating voice and words still echo in his mind, and he refuses to let it all end like this. The agent feels like a professional failure for letting his emotions get the better of him and being distracted. He hears footsteps approaching and analyzes the sound, identifying a muscular man, 6 feet tall, by his gait. Suddenly, the protagonist opens his eyes in a state of full alert, prepared for whatever is coming his way. A young blonde man appears with a piece of wood in his hand, ready to attack the fallen protagonist. With a swift movement, our character dodges the blow, and the blonde man hits the ground, splashing water. The attacker is surprised and says he thought he had knocked the boy out with the last blow he delivered. The protagonist gets up confused and wonders who that guy is and where he is. He looks around and sees that he is in an unfamiliar place in the middle of a rainy clearing. The blonde man wastes no time and charges forward again, shouting that the next blow will surely finish him off. Despite the confusion, the protagonist knows he needs to eliminate the enemy in front of him to survive. He prepares for combat, and in his mind, the connection his abilities seems to be established. With a well-aimed punch, the protagonist strikes the attacker in the chin, but the blonde man barely moves and asks with a smile what that weak punch was all about. 1 or a 1? The aggressor angrily grabs the protagonist's collar, asking if he's making fun of him. With a violent shove, the blonde man throws the boy to the ground with all his might. The protagonist falls backward into the water, and his glasses fly off from the impact. He stands up confused and wonders why his attack didn't work and what's going on. The agent feels a strange sensation, as if the body he is controlling is not his own. He looks at his reflection in the puddle of water and is shocked by what he sees. The face staring back at him isn't his own, and he desperately wonders who this person is. Upon seeing her thin, delicate hands, he realizes that something very strange is happening to him. The blonde man doesn't give him time to think and yells at him to shut up while raising the piece of wood to attack. But when he goes to attack, the protagonist is no longer there, leaving the aggressor surprised. The blonde man turns around, confused, and wonders how he disappeared so quickly from his sight. Suddenly, the protagonist appears behind him, standing, and with a completely different posture than before. The attacker is impressed and says that his movements have suddenly improved and wonders what on earth happened. The blonde man attacks again, but the protagonist easily dodges, anticipating his every move. The attacker's heart races when he sees the boy's dodging skills, a boy who was previously an easy target. The protagonist continues to dodge the blows with fluid and precise movements, leaving the blonde man frustrated. In his mind, the agent perceives that the enemy's movements are simple and easy for him to read. But he also notes that this new body cannot perfectly keep up with his thoughts and abilities. Judging by the force of the last blow, he knows it will be difficult to beat the blonde guy in a normal fight. The protagonist kneels in the water and prepares to use a different strategy to win. With a swift movement, the protagonist throws water in the aggressor's face, who screams in surprise at the attack. The blonde man wiped his irritated face and wondered what that was all about, not understanding the boy's tactic. He then looks around and sees no one else and shouts, asking where the boy went. Hidden in a tree, the protagonist catches his breath and realizes that this body is anything but athletic. He leans against the branch and thinks that first and foremost he needs to understand what is happening to him. The officer remembers being hit on the head by that man with the irritating voice before all this. With this, he understands that he is in the body of an unknown young man who appears to be a high school student. Looking around, he sees a park surrounded by buildings and wonders where in the world he has ended up. He surveys the cityscape and feels that the place seems somehow familiar to him. The protagonist remembers that the blonde man who attacked him was speaking Japanese during the fight. This makes him wonder if he's in Japan and why he's in the body of this weak boy being attacked. Suddenly, the attacker finds him in the tree and shouts that he made him work to find him. The blonde man climbs onto the branch with a confident smile and warns that this time the boy won't escape. The attacker lunges with a club, but the protagonist jumps from the branch to dodge the blow at the last second. He falls back into the water, feeling the impact of the fall on his already tired and injured body. The blonde man is shocked that he dodged again and says that his movements seem like someone else's. The officer looks at his hand and thinks he twisted it because his body didn't react to his movements during the fall. Cold and with an injured hand, he realizes that at this pace his body won't be able to hold out much longer. The aggressor smiles and says he doesn't understand why a weakling like him is in a fighting battle. He is grateful because, thanks to the boy, He will be the only one who will profit handsomely from all this. The protagonist begins to understand that he's in a battle where money is at stake and wonders if the blonde guy still wants to run. He stands up and faces the attacker in the tree, saying he has something good to tell him. The blonde man is confused by the change in attitude and wonders what the boy is talking about. The agent then analyzes the enemy's fighting style, saying that their movements are full of pointless effort and easy to predict. He continues to taunt, saying that the aggressor's voice is unpleasant and that he should remain quiet during a fight. With that, the blonde man loses his patience and jumps out of the tree, shouting that he's going to finish off the protagonist once and for all. Our character's eyes glow with an intense blue light, showing that he is ready for combat. The attacker stops mid-attack, shocked, and asks how he did that, completely bewildered. We see a close-up of the protagonist's eyes, which stare at the enemy with a chilling coldness. The blonde man's club is stopped in mid-air by a vine trap right in front of the boy. The attacker's eyes turn white with shock at seeing his attack neutralized so easily. A snapping sound echoes through the clearing as the trap is triggered at full force. Suddenly, the blonde man is pulled upwards and left hanging upside down, not understanding what happened. The protagonist stares at the trapped enemy, his eyes still gleaming, ready for a counterattack. With a powerful punch, he strikes the attacker in the stomach, who screams in pain from the impact of the blow. Our character calmly walks away while the enemy suffers the consequences of the surprise attack. Hanging there in pain, the blonde man realizes that the boy had been setting a trap in the tree all along. The agent explains that he knew he would come up because his presence was obvious, and it was easy to set the trap with the vines. The aggressor understands that he was deliberately provoked into falling into the trap and becomes furious upon learning this. Our hero picks up the club the ground and says he needed to neutralize it to win the fight. The blonde man yells in anger at having fallen for a provocation and wonders if even getting hit was part of the plan. With a swift movement, the protagonist then smashes the club against his knee, showing that the conversation is over. He points the two sharp ends of the branch at the neck of the hanging enemy, ready for interrogation. With a menacing look, the officer demands to know who the aggressor is and why he is being pursued. Kudo shouts in confusion, saying that the boy knew what he was getting into when he entered the battle. Sakuraba presses the branch against his neck and demands an explanation of what this fighting battle is all about. Seeing that he won't get anywhere, the protagonist squeezes harder, making the enemy scream in pain. Unable to withstand the pressure any longer, the blonde man finally shouts that he surrenders to end his suffering. The agent is surprised by the surrender, but a notification arrives stating that the surrender has been accepted. Suddenly, a blue light envelopes the protagonist's body, leaving him confused about its meaning. An app called Suzano appears on his cell phone, declaring Keisuke Sakuraba the winner of the match. Sakuraba stares at his phone in shock when he sees that the name of the body he's using is Keisuke Sakuraba. He continues staring at the screen with an expression of pure confusion, not understanding anything that happened. The guy then realizes that the fight was being streamed live, with numerous comments from viewers. The image on the cell phone shows the exact scene in which he was interrogating the assailant while he was hanging from the tree. Looking up, he finally sees a drone and wonders if that camera had been filming him the whole time. Reading the comments, he confirms that the audience saw the entire fight, including the trap he set. Sakuraba then shows his cell phone to Kudo so that he can also see the broadcast and the comments. With the evidence in hand, he demands that the aggressor answer his questions now that the fight is over. But before Kudo could say anything, Sakuraba hit him with his cell phone, telling him to shut up. The broken cell phone falls into the puddle of water, and the aggressor becomes even more irritated by the boy's behavior. Kudo shouts angrily, saying that he lost the prize money because of that fight. He then asks to be released, but the protagonist doesn't pay any attention to his pleas. With another punch to the stomach, Sakuraba makes the enemy scream in pain again. The officer says he's noisy and should get some sleep before they knock him unconscious. After everything, Sakuraba picks up the broken cell phone and realizes that it doesn't turn on and that he would need tools to fix it. He empties the student's backpack and arranges the items on a table to analyze the situation. By taking out his student ID, he confirms that his consciousness is in another person's body. The wallet belongs to Keisuke Sakuraba, a 17-year-old student at Sumi High School. The agent remembers the battle and wonders what it's all about, but knows he needs more information. For now, he decides to go to the address on his student ID to begin the investigation. With his backpack on his back, he begins to walk through the city, unconcerned by the strangeness of the situation. The reflection in the puddle shows Geist's former self as he walks in search of answers. Sakuraba arrives at a bustling commercial district and observes the activity around him. He sees people shopping and working and realizes that he is actually in Japan. The protagonist thinks to himself that, as always, this is a rather hectic and busy country. Suddenly, he hears a scream and sees a girl running after a thief who stole her purse. The girl screams desperately for him to return her purse as the thief flees through the crowd. Sakuraba watches the scene from afar, seeing the thief walk away with the girl's purse. With this, he prepares to intervene and help the girl. The protagonist reflects that he thought Japan was a safe place, but the scene makes him doubt it. Since he still doesn't understand the situation, he decides not to get involved to avoid problems and continue on his way. However, the girl's desperate cries for help echo through the street and make him stop. Upon hearing the cry for help, something within him changes, and his gaze becomes serious and focused. A memory of a little girl in danger amidst the flames flashes through his mind, causing him to relive a trauma. With that, he changes his mind and turns to face the thief, who is running towards him. Sakuraba stands still as the criminal runs past him, unaware that he is about to act. Suddenly, he grabs the thief's arm forcefully, and the man is startled by the unexpected action. Using a mysterious blue energy, Sakuraba strikes the criminal with a precise and powerful hand blow. The thief falls to the ground, stunned, wondering what just happened, without understanding where the attack came from. The protagonist then pins him to the ground to ensure he cannot escape again. Then he lifts him off the ground by the collar, making the thief scream in pain from the force of the grip. His eyes gleam with the same blue light as before, displaying a cold and determined gaze towards the criminal. But soon after, Sakuraba himself seems confused and wonders what on earth he just did. Looking around, he notices that a crowd has gathered to watch the entire scene unfold. The girl who was robbed tries to push her way through the crowd to retrieve her purse, which is on the ground. One of her friends calls her by the name Manaka-chan, trying to reach her amidst the confusion. Manaka turns to her friend Chinatsu in surprise and tells her to be careful and not to run. The two girls stare at the scene, shocked and unable to believe what they are seeing right in front of them. They then recognize him and call him older brother and Kei-chan, leaving Sakuraba even more confused. The girls ask what he's doing there with expressions of surprise and concern. The protagonist realizes that he has become involved in something problematic and that the situation has become even more complicated. After the incident, the police arrive and everyone is questioned before finally being released. The younger girl asked if her brother had been secretly strong all along, which piqued his curiosity. The agent ponders what to do from now on while the girl stares at him, waiting for an answer. The older friend Manaka intervenes and tells Chinatsu that he wouldn't hurt a fly. She asks why her brother has been so quiet the whole time, and the protagonist decides he needs to use that trick. Manaka tries to get his attention, but he seems to be in his own world at that moment. Suddenly, he feigns a panic attack and shouts that he was terrified of it all. He continues to act, saying that he only stretched out his arm and leg and luckily managed to stop the thief. Then he turns to Chinatsu and asks if she's all right, saying that was his only concern. The two girls were surprised by his attitude, which seemed very genuine and concerned. Chinatsu smiles and says that this is the brother she knows, confirming that he is completely fine. Manaka then asks where his glasses are, and the boy makes up a story about how they broke when he fell earlier. He walks away from the girls and continues on his way, leaving them behind with a thoughtful look. The protagonist observes the scene with a serious and analytical gaze, trying to understand the dynamic between them. He realizes that his assessment of Keisuke Sakuraba's personality was correct based on their conversation. With the information he gathered, he discovers that the older girl is Manaka Nanis, Keisuke's childhood friend. The other girl is 13-year-old Chinatsu Sakuraba, the biological sister of the body he is occupying. He also discovers that the Sakuraba family consists only of the two brothers who lost their parents. The friend has known the brothers since they were young and was shopping with Chinatsu when the incident happened. It was at that moment that they encountered the purse thief, and the whole commotion began in the middle of the street. The agent examines Keisuke's personal items, including a diary with detailed notes. He discovers that Keisuke is known for being kind and devoted to his sister, but for having poor athletic abilities. Based on the information provided, the boy appears to be a normal high school student who could be found anywhere. The protagonist wonders why such a strange situation as the fighting battle happened to a boy like him. He thinks that fighting is something very far removed from Keisuke's peaceful and gentle personality, and one more thing intrigues him, and he decides to investigate further to understand everything. He then catches up with Manaka and calls her over to talk about his sister Chinatsu's condition. Manaka replies that she is stable today, but that the situation could change at any moment. She explains that an attack could happen at any time, but that she will be careful during her temporary release. The protagonist watches Chinatsu walk away and realizes from the way she walks that the problem lies in her heart. He understands that she looks fine on the outside, but has a serious illness that requires constant care. Manaka stares at him worriedly, and he prepares to ask more important questions about the situation. She then changes the subject and asks where he got so dirty, leaving him embarrassed. The boy laughs and makes up a story that it was raining and he ended up falling into a mud puddle. Manaka looks at him suspiciously and doesn't seem to quite believe the story he told. In a serious tone, she warns him not to believe strange offers, no matter how much he needs money. She urges him not to be fooled by the smooth talk of a guy named Sakia who seems dangerous. Manaka reveals that she has heard rumors that Sakia is involved with bad people and shady dealings. The protagonist listens attentively to Manaka's words and begins to piece together the puzzle. He smiles and thanks Manaka for the information, saying that he already knows what he needs to do. With her words, the pieces fall into place, and the scenario of violence and money finally makes sense. He understands that Keisuke needed money to pay for the surgery and cure his sister Chinatsu's illness. The fight in the live broadcast were the means to raise this money through the Susanoo event. He manages to fix the cell phone and sees that the device is finally turning on and working. With a determined look, he prepares to investigate the app and find out more about Susanoo. He finds the icon on his phone screen and prepares to open it and see what he discovers. The icon is the same as the one from the match he won, confirming the connection to the fighting event. At that moment, the image of the man who eliminated him flashes through his mind, bringing back the anger. The memory of the villain smiling with a gun pointed at him still haunts him deeply. The protagonist then sits down in front of a computer and tries to analyze the application in search of answers. But he realizes that the app's protection is very strong and that it won't be easy to hack. With a home computer, it's impossible to hack into the system, so a different approach is needed. He then decides to investigate the app on his phone to understand how the Susanoo event works. The filmed fights are likely streamed through this app to a specific audience that pays to watch, and the app icon is unmistakable, confirming your suspicions about the event's origin. He recognizes the badge the man who eliminated him was wearing on his suit. The connection between him and Keisuke Sakuraba is still a mystery, but he knows it's not a coincidence. The protagonist is certain that there is some connection between his elimination and the Susanoo event. He remembers the conversation with Manaka and wonders why Senna found the story strange. While researching online, the protagonist discovers that the Susanoo app is treated as an urban legend. In online forums, people are debating whether the app is real, with some saying it's fake, and others warning about the dangers. He discovers that Susanoo is a battle event where one can participate by installing an app through an obscure route. The app randomly selects an opponent's location and time for the match to begin. Everything is secretly broadcast throughout the country using the latest filming technology. There are rumors that the company behind the app is linked to government agencies and has never been prosecuted. Even in online forums, the information is received with skepticism, but the protagonist knows that the app exists. He checks Keisuke's bank account and sees a deposit of 1 million yen made shortly after the fight. This confirms that the money was the prize for winning and that the organization has considerable power. But the most shocking discovery for him was something else he found while researching. He realizes that the current date is 5 years after his supposed departure in his original body. The date of his elimination was May 11, 2023. And exactly 5 years have passed. Now it makes sense why he never heard of Susanoo, since the organization grew rapidly after his absence. He then wonders if the organization grew so rapidly because of his elimination and not in spite of it. The theory that they eliminated him to develop the app without interference seems increasingly likely. Suddenly, the door opens and a female voice announces her arrival, breaking the silence. A woman enters the house with a smile and introduces herself as Kana-chan, who has just arrived. The protagonist recognizes her as Kana Sakakibara, the aunt of the Sakuraba siblings who takes care of them. To keep up appearances, he greets her as Keisuke, thanking her for her hard work as always. Kanae hugs him tightly and calls him Ki-chan in a very animated and affectionate way. She asks him to call her Kana-chan because she feels sad about the distance between them. The protagonist pushes her away, saying she's being noisy and that Chinatsu is already asleep. Kanae reassures him, saying that he doesn't need to worry about Chinatsu's expenses and that he can leave everything to her. She then notices that he is not wearing his glasses and asks him where they are with a curious expression. Looking closer at him, the woman holds him by the shoulders and examines him carefully. She compliments him, saying he's handsome, and the young man awkwardly thanks her for the unexpected comment. Kanae jokingly says that if she were younger, she would go on a date with him, and gets all excited. Suddenly, she feels dizzy, and a strange noise echoes through the dark apartment. The protagonist finds her bent over on the floor and asks if she's all right, worried about her condition. Kanae goes to the bathroom and seems to be feeling very unwell while the boy watches her from the doorway. He then decides that he has investigated enough for today and needs some time to process everything. With a handshake, he prepares for the next phase of his mission in this new body. On his cell phone, he receives a notification that Susanoo's next battle has already been scheduled. The notification indicates that the next fight will take place soon, and he needs to prepare for it. The next day, he looks at himself in the bathroom mirror, with his hair cut and a new look. He decided to cut his bangs and take off his glasses because they would get in the way during the fight. Despite Keisuke's physically weak body, he knows he needs to train it for the future. He feels bad for the body's original owner, but decides he will use it for his own purposes. Luckily, Chinatsu is in the hospital for a checkup, which gives him time to prepare for the next battle. With Kanae working and Chinatsu in the hospital, the protagonist has the house to himself and can prepare. Before they return, he decides to go and sort things out and leaves home determined for the next battle. He arrives at an abandoned building that will be the site of the fight and prepares for what is to come. Upon entering, he sees several drones scattered around the area, ready to film every moment of the fight. The protagonist faces the scene with a serious look and realizes that the attention on this fight is greater. He's not thrilled about the situation, but he knows he has no choice but to play this game. This game is the only clue he has to reach the man who eliminated him, and he's not giving up. Suddenly, he sees his opponent warming up with quick and precise shadow boxing movements. The young man apologizes for the delay and says he was recording a video for his channel before the match. He goes on to say that Susano probably already knew he was filming and didn't care. The man introduces himself as Takashi Mukai, a martial arts YouTuber, and extends his hand to greet him. The protagonist stares at him with a serious look and prepares for the handshake before the fight. The two greet each other formally, and Mukai addresses him Sakuraba in a professional tone. Mukai comments that he watched his last match and that he has a different vibe now and asks if he's the same person. The YouTuber observes him and says that he seems quite mature for a high school student. The protagonist realizes that his opponent is shrewd and is watching him closely like a former boxer. Searching online, he discovered that Takashi Mukai is a former professional boxer with an impressive track record. He was a skilled fighter who was once ranked 15th in the world in the heavyweight division. However, in a fight sponsored by a large corporation, his opponent ended up dying in the ring. He watched videos of Mukai's past fights and saw that he was an fighter with excellent agility and strength. His specialty is closing the distance instantly with a right hook, but he doesn't seem to have relaxed during training. The physical difference between them is obvious, and even with their fighting skills, it will be difficult to win. Mukai adjusts his cell phone on the tripod and prepares to start the match that is about to begin. He praises the protagonist's incredible moves in the final fight, saying they didn't look like those of a normal student. The YouTuber says his viewers expect another incredible performance and welcomes the challenge. He asks the protagonist to go easy on him, but his gaze says exactly the opposite. The two stare at each other seriously, and the protagonist thinks that this time he had time to prepare. He understood the structure of the ruins and simulated countermeasures for any unforeseen event that might occur. With everything ready, he prepares for the countdown that announces the start of the match. A voice announces the Rank D Susano match between Takashi Mukai and Keisuke Sakuraba. The two fighters are introduced and prepare for the fight that is about to begin. The match begins and the lights come on, illuminating the fighting scene in the abandoned building. The protagonist decides to observe Mukai's movements first to see how he behaves in a real fight. He loosens his tie to have more freedom of movement and prepares for his opponent's first attack. Mukai advances rapidly, and the protagonist realizes that he is even faster than during the warm-up. He knows that if the fighter manages to close the distance, he'll be in serious trouble and needs to keep his distance. The YouTuber chases after him and asks if he's going to keep running, saying that he can't escape his speed. He taunts him, saying that the spectators will complain if they don't start fighting soon. With a swift punch, he attempts to strike the protagonist, who braces himself for the impact of the blow. The protagonist dodges the punch, but it still grazes him. Mukai smiles and says that it seems his moves in the last battle weren't just luck. With a confident smile, he prepares to attack again with all his might. The protagonist realizes that Mukai's specialty is the right hook and that he's in trouble. He thinks escaping that blow from that distance is probably impossible and prepares for the worst. Mukai advances with his right hook, ready to strike the protagonist in the face with a devastating blow. But the protagonist manages to block the punch with his forearm at the last second, surprising his opponent. Mukai is shocked to see his best attack blocked instantly and praises the boy's defense. The protagonist keeps his guard up, and Mukai realizes he has something prepared for the fight. He confirms that he anticipated the right hook by watching his old fights and prepared for it. The agent reveals that he placed a steel plate in Keisuke's forearm because he knew his body wouldn't withstand the blow. Mukai is surprised by the level of preparation and wonders if he is really a high school student. He admits that having his best punch blocked by an amateur with no boxing experience tarnishes his image. The YouTuber imagines that the comments must be booming and that protagonist is gaining a lot of likes. But he says that if that's the case, he's not having fun and is preparing to fight seriously. Mukai charges forward with renewed fury and strikes the protagonist with a series of rapid punches. The protagonist feels the force of the blows and realizes that his opponent is now taking the fight seriously. Mukai attacks again with even more speed and force, showing that he won't hold back this time. He unleashes a flurry of punches, and the protagonist tries to defend himself as best he can from the avalanche of blows. The protagonist realizes that his opponent is fast, and that each punch is extremely powerful and difficult to block. He continues to defend himself from the attacks, but he knows he won't be able to hold out much longer. The protagonist recognizes Mukai's skill, but knows he can't continue just defending himself. Mukai is more resilient than he thought, and continues to pressure him with powerful punches. The YouTuber realizes that his viewership numbers aren't going to increase that way, and decides to use a new tactic. He lunges forward with another right hook, but this time the protagonist braces himself for impact. The protagonist notices the right hook coming his way and braces himself for what's to come. But Mukai dodges the blow and lands a punch on the protagonist's body, who screams in pain. The protagonist realizes he has fallen for a feint and prepares for his opponent's next attack. Mukai continues to attack with speed and precision, giving the protagonist no time to recover. The protagonist dodges the next blow, but the force of the attack throws him off balance for a moment. He feels the pain of the blow in his body and knows he can't take many more like that. He recovers quickly and faces his opponent with a determined look, ready for the next round. The scene is broadcast live, and a spectator comments on Mukai's body blow. Another spectator comments that the blow seemed to have hurt a lot and wonders how the fight will continue. Viewers are wondering how Sakuraba will manage to turn the situation in his favor after taking such a hard blow. Mukai smiles and wonders if the spectators' comments were excited about the feat he just used. He explains that because his right hook is famous, his opponents are wary, and he can use that to his advantage. The protagonist realizes that his opponent is a clever boxer who adapts his tactics quickly. Mukai has absolute confidence in his speed and uses it to close the distance and land powerful blows. With his eyes gleaming, the protagonist decides that he will have to use his own strategy against him. Mukai taunts him, saying that he is intelligent and that he was thinking of a strategy to defeat him. Mukai says that the viewers won't wait and that he won't give him time to think of a strategy. The protagonist prepares for Mukai's attack, who advances with a series of quick and powerful punches. Mukai wonders why his opponent has such calm eyes, even when on the defensive. Deeply irritated by the protagonist's gaze, he advances with even more fury to attack. The protagonist dodges Mukai's punch with a precise movement and prepares for a counterattack. Mukai is shocked to see his punch deflected and wonders how the boy managed to do that. With his eyes glowing blue, the protagonist prepares to launch his own surprise attack. He strikes Mukai with a blue energy blast that throws him backward with the force of the impact. Mukai recoils in stunned silence and realizes that the protagonist dodged his hook and launched a counterattack. He wonders who the hell this guy is who can fight him on equal terms. Mukai senses that his opponent is underestimating him and prepares to attack with even more fury. The two exchange blows at high speed in an intense and balanced battle of punches. The protagonist thinks the counterattack should have landed, but Keisuke's body couldn't keep up. He realizes that Mukai's reaction speed may have been faster than his at that moment. The protagonist feels that his body is reaching its limit and that he only has one more chance. Mukai takes a deep breath and wonders what his opponent is thinking to continue fighting. He warns him not to think he understood his right hook just because he dodged it once. Mukai advances with another hook, but the protagonist prepares for a new tactic. He realizes it's not a detour this time and prepares for what's to come. The protagonist then grabs Mukai's arm and pulls him down using his own strength against him. The protagonist prepares to launch a precise and powerful counter attack to turn the game around. The counter attack uses the opponent's own momentum to inflict far more damage than a normal punch. Using the power of Mukai's hook, he compensates for Keisuke's lack of punching power. However, to execute a counter attack successfully, one needs highly trained and precise kinetic vision. The protagonist waited for Mukai's weakness to appear by researching his old fights on streaming websites. While watching videos before the fight, he noticed a pattern in his opponent's fighting style. The reason for his defeats was that he quickly ran out of breath when using his right hooks. While defending himself, he noticed Mukai's increased sweating and heavy breathing, indicating exhaustion. He knew that when Mukai's stamina ran out, the speed of his hook would decrease. At that moment, even Keisuke's limited kinetic vision would be able to dodge the blow. With Mukai on the ground, the protagonist prepares to deliver the final blow and win the match. Sakuraba's counterattack caused serious damage to Mukai, who appears to be in trouble. Mukai struggles to his feet and tells himself that he absolutely cannot lose. He tightens the bracelet on his wrist and prepares to continue fighting with renewed determination. With a determined smile, he says he won't lose in a place like that and prepares for the final attack. The protagonist prepares for the final attack, but suddenly feels something strange on his arm. His arm won't move, and he realizes that Keisuke's body has reached its physical limit. He realizes the true strength of a world-class fighter and admits that he underestimated his opponent. He knows that if things continue like this, he won't have a chance of winning the fight. He advances towards them, ready for the final confrontation. Mukai charges forward with a determined shout, declaring that he absolutely cannot lose. He thinks of his family and the bracelet on his wrist, which motivates him to keep fighting. A memory of a girl named Susanna resurfaces in his mind, filling him with conflicting emotions. Suddenly, he sees the girl in front of him and becomes confused, not understanding what is happening. The sight of Susanna distracts him, and he wonders why she is there at that moment. Taking advantage of the distraction, the protagonist launches a surprise attack to turn the tide of the game. He leaps into the air and prepares a powerful kick to strike his opponent while he is vulnerable. Mukai notices the kick and is surprised by the force of the attack, but prepares himself to withstand the blow. He tells himself that he can withstand this level of power and that he will fight back to win. The protagonist continues with his spinning attack, ready to hit the opponent with all his might. With a kick of blue energy, he hits Mukai squarely, throwing him backward with the impact. Mukai screams in pain as he is struck by the powerful kick and falls to the ground, stunned. He realizes he's been hit by a combination of taekwondo kicks and is shocked by the boy's skill. He falls to the ground, feeling the pain of the blow, and the bracelet with the dolphin stands out on his wrist. An old newspaper article about the tragedy in the ring in which his opponent died comes back to his mind. The memory of the incident haunts him, and he clenches his fist in anger and frustration. A woman tries to console him by saying it was an accident, but he angrily tells her to shut up. He reads the news and wonders if it was really an accident, since the world is calling him guilty. In anger, he accuses the woman of secretly thinking the same thing and orders her to leave his house. The woman tries to deny it, but he throws her out and is left alone with his pain and guilt in the darkness. The memory of his loneliness and despair haunts him as he recalls begging everyone to leave him alone. Years later, he started streaming videos to cope with his grief and received a letter from his wife. The letter contained a photo of his daughter Sana, who was calling him Dayad, with a smile on her face. In the letter, his wife said that Sana had lovingly made an amulet for him. The amulet was a dolphin, and the letter said she hoped her father would become the world champion. The memory of his daughter fills him with emotion, and he feels happier with the amulet than with a championship belt. He remembers Sana cheering him on, and her promise to seize that happiness again. He thought that if he became more famous and earned more money, he could get his family back. The memory of his family and the dolphin amulet fills him with hope for the future. In the present moment, he falls to the ground defeated and whispers his daughter Sana's name. The live broadcast shows their defeat, and the commentator's voice announces the end of the match. The narrator declares Sakuraba Keisuke the winner with a spectacular knockout victory. Spectators are shocked by the victory of a weak student against a former world-class boxer. The protagonist picks up the dolphin amulet that fell to the ground and wonders who the hell this guy is. He realizes that the fight was a close one, and that Mukai's movement stopped at that crucial moment. Thanks to that opening, he was able to land 2 consecutive kicks and win the fight. He wonders what Mukai was looking at, but he knows that without the distraction, he would have been defeated. Suddenly he hears a noise and sees a girl hiding in the dark corner of the building. The girl asks why he is doing something like that, with an expression of fear and confusion. With tears in her eyes, she calls him Ki-chan, leaving the protagonist even more confused by the situation. He recognizes her as Nanis Manaka, Kizuke's childhood friend, and wonders what she's doing there. A drone approaches, and the protagonist wonders if it's an intruder and who she really is. The girl pulls him by the arm and yells for him to follow her so they can get out of there as quickly as possible. They run out of the building and stop at a bus stop to catch their breath after the escape. Manaka complains that he ran too fast, and the protagonist stares at her with a serious look. He asked her why she was in that abandoned building, wanting to understand the reason for her presence. The girl replied that she went to see him because he seemed strange when they met the previous day. The boy is surprised by the answer and the question of how she knew he was in that place. She shows him her cell phone and explains that their phones share location data with each other. Manaka says he did this because of what happened to Chinatsu in case something happened to him. The protagonist berates himself for not noticing the tracking app on Kizuke's phone. He decides to forget about it for now and asks her what she was doing there in the first place. The scene changes to the protagonist practicing parkour on a rooftop, leaping between buildings with agility. He jumps from one building to another using techniques from the athletic discipline originating in France. Parkour is known for its flashy and acrobatic movements and is seen as an extreme sport. But in reality, it's a scientific training method based on its own unique philosophy. It's about understanding the physical limits of your own body and striving to reach its full potential. Despite the dangers, he knows this is the quickest way to learn how to use this new body. He checks the muscle mass in his arms and legs and pushes them to their absolute limit to get stronger. He carefully learns what his current self can and cannot do and dedicates himself fully to training. He slowly adjusts to this new body and its physical limitations compared to his former self. He reflects on his past struggles and realizes that the performance gap wasn't the only problem. The main reason for his difficulties was that he was not used to this new body and its capabilities. He knows it will be difficult to fight like before, but he believes he can adapt and improve his fighting style. Parkour training is all about adapting to and mastering this new body for your future battles. The scene returns to the conversation with Manaka, where she questions him about Sakiya's offer. 2 hours earlier, he had decided to be honest with Manaka about Susanoo, since she had seen what happened. The girl is shocked and can't believe what she's hearing about the dangerous fights. She says something is wrong with him and points to his haircut, asking what happened to him. Manaka begs him to stop, saying it's not too late to give up something so dangerous. But the protagonist looks at her with a serious expression and says that he can't stop now that he's started. He thinks about his own reasons for continuing and about the man he needs to find at all costs. He also considers Kizuke's motives and his sister's illness that led him down this path. The protagonist says that this is not an option and that he needs to continue fighting for Chinatsu's sake. He explains that it is unknown when Chinatsu's heart will stop and that she needs an urgent transplant. The surgery needs to be done abroad, and the insurance doesn't cover the extremely high costs. With the surgery and travel expenses, they will need at least 500 million yen. It was knowing this reality that led Kizuke to choose the path of carnage and join Susanoo. He feels he must honor Kizuke's feelings and continue fighting for his sister. With a smile, he reassures her, saying that she will be fine and that for some reason he feels stronger. Manaka questions him about not having spoken to her and feels powerless because she can't help him. With tears in her eyes, she asks if she is truly so insignificant to him that she deserves to be left out. She runs away hurt, and the protagonist calls out to her, unsure of what to do in that situation. He watches the girl run away and feels frustrated by the unexpected complication in his mission. The protagonist prepares to return to training and thinks he would have preferred not to have gotten involved in this mess. He climbs onto a parapet and prepares for another nighttime parkour training session. With a precise leap, he launches himself to the next building, using his agility to move around. He lands perfectly and continues his training, leaping between rooftops with mastery. The scene changes to the front door of the house, where Chinatsu awaits him with a worried expression. The girl sees him arrive injured and asks what happened to him, looking very scared. He laughs and says he tripped again, but a tree on the side of the road saved him from falling. Chinatsu stares at him suspiciously and calls him older brother in a serious tone. She asks if he had a fight with Manaka, and the protagonist is surprised by the sudden question. The girl explains that she called Manaka and that she seemed very sad during the conversation. She jokingly says that Manaka probably said his new hairstyle didn't suit him, but then she gets serious and tells him to make peace with his friend, saying she won't mediate their fights anymore. Chinatsu sighs and says that having a hopeless older brother worries his younger sister. Suddenly, an image of a mysterious girl appears, saying that he is nothing but useless without her. The protagonist remembers the fight and wonders if he should have intervened in that situation. He agrees to apologize, and Chinatsu tells him to make amends with Manaka at school the next day. The protagonist remembers that he is now a student and needs to go to school like Keisuke would. He arrives at school and prepares for another day of acting like a normal student. He sees Manaka in the hallway and calls out to her, but she seems to be avoiding him after their fight. Suddenly, a classmate approaches him and asks about his new haircut with a smile. The protagonist stares at the boy with a serious look and wonders who he is and what he wants. The colleague is accompanied by two other boys, and the protagonist realizes that they don't seem to be friends. The boy calls him over for a chat, and the protagonist looks at him with suspicion and curiosity. They go to an alley behind the school, and the classmate says he never thought he would win 2 fights in a row. The protagonist recognizes him as the guy who invited Kichu to Susano and prepares for the conversation. The boy's name is Sakuya Yuji, and he feels proud to have been the one who got him into the event. The protagonist had already hacked into the school's database and obtained Sakuya's profile to find out who he was dealing with. He discovered that Sakuya is a delinquent student with a bad attitude and many unjustified absences. Sakuya has a terrible reputation at school, and he is involved in robberies, extortion, and even trafficking. There are rumors that he is the leader of a criminal group and is involved in all sorts of illegal activities. Despite everything, he never had any trouble with the police, and there are rumors that he is protected by a mysterious organization. The protagonist wonders if this organization could be the same one that manages Susanoo and what Sakuya's connection to it is. Sakuya presses him, asking why he's silent, and the protagonist decides to pretend he doesn't know anything. He asks what he can do for Sakuya, and the boy replies that he wants his share of the money. Sakuya says that he only earned the money thanks to his referral, and that is a sign of gratitude. He should give him a share. With a menacing smile, he says that this is the deal and expects to receive his share of the prize. Sakuya explains that the prize for a rank D fight is 1 million, and since the boy won twice, he earned 2 million. With a menacing smile, he says he'll give a discount and demands 1,800,000 of the money. The protagonist feigns despair, saying it's impossible, but realizes the delinquent is just a low-level thug. He concludes that the person is not important to the organization and decides that he will try to bluff his way out of this situation. Then one of the henchmen suggests that instead of the money, they take the girl Nanis and compliments her body. With a disgusting grin, the man says he'd rather have the girl than the prize money from the fight. The henchman then advances menacingly toward our character to intimidate him. Seeing this, Sakuraba's body moves on its own with a fury he cannot control. Angrily, he grabs the man's jacket and shouts, asking who the hell he thinks he is. Using a blue energy, he throws the attacker over his shoulder with impressive force. His eyes gleam with the same blue light as before, displaying a cold and determined look towards others. Sakuya and his other companion are completely shocked by the unexpected display of strength. They rush to help their friend, who has fallen to the ground, and discover that he was knocked out with a single blow. Suddenly, a voice shouts from afar, asking what the hell they are doing in that place. Sikia orders his men to leave, but one of them tries to warn him to wait before fleeing. While running, the delinquent thinks about that haste and realizes that the protagonist is not a normal guy. He wonders if the last two fights were just luck and begins to fear the boy's power. Seeing them flee, the protagonist laments and hopes that this will not become a bigger problem for him. Suddenly, a man approaches him and asks if he's all right after all the commotion, but when he looks at it, the man cries out in surprise, unable to believe what he is seeing in front of him. The two recognize each other with expressions of surprise on their faces, not understanding the coincidence. The mysterious man looks at the protagonist's uniform and at the school in the background. He comments that the boy seemed familiar and confirms that he is indeed a student at that school. With a smile, he says he's surprised to see him again a day after the fight. The protagonist replies that this is his line of reasoning and asks what the person is doing at school. Mukai reveals that he graduated from that school, and the two sit down to talk on a bench. He explains that he received an offer to be a coach at the boxing club, and that he decided to accept the invitation. The former fighter then asks if the young man knows why he retired from his career. He recalls the disaster in the ring and admits that he couldn't face boxing anymore after that. With this, he reveals that the incident also led to his separation from his family. That's why he became a YouTuber and joined Susano in search of a new opportunity. The man explains that he did all this thinking that if he became famous and rich, his family would return. With a sad look, he admits that it was very superficial of him to think that way. But he says that after being knocked out by the protagonist, he remembered something important. He remembered his family and how his daughter smiled when she saw him dedicate himself to boxing. And after his defeat, his daughter contacted him for the first time in many years, which surprised him. Crying, he recounts that she liked him more as a boxer than as a famous YouTuber. He realized that fame and money were for him, and that his daughter only wanted him to move on. With a determined smile, he says he has decided to take boxing seriously once again. The protagonist then hands over the dolphin amulet and says he was going to send it to his channel. With that, he offers the amulet back to Mukai, who is surprised by the boy's gesture. Mukai picks up the object and recognizes it immediately, while the protagonist says he's only found one of them. The boy apologizes for taking it without asking and says he was going to return it sooner, but something unexpected happened. The former fighter then asks if the amulet was a gift from his son, and the protagonist nods in confirmation. A memory of a little girl calling him sensei and giving him the lucky charm flashes through his mind. He says he's been in his shoes and understands him, but Mukai wonders how a student could know that. Despite the commotion, the former boxer expresses his gratitude and leaves the amulet on the fence next to them. Suddenly, a notification from Susano pops up on my phone announcing a new battle and the next opponent. The protagonist is shocked to see the notification on his cell phone and wonders what it means. Meanwhile, Manaka walks alone at night, lamenting that she couldn't face Ki-chan and had to run away. With tears in her eyes, she knows she can't continue acting like this, but she feels lost and frustrated. Standing under the light of a lamppost, the girl seems thoughtful and saddened by the complicated situation. She then continues walking through the dark streets of the city with a heavy and worried look in her eyes. Suddenly, someone grabs her arm and she turns around startled, not understanding what is happening. The scene changes to an announcement of a special promotional match for Susano, with drones flying over the city. The narrator informs us that the battle will take place at an old school building in Tokyo that is slated for demolition. He introduces the first fighter as an unknown but miraculous rookie who has defeated several opponents. From a dark door emerges the D-rank fighter Keisuke Sakuraba, ready for another battle. The narrator explains that because of his 2 consecutive victories, a special match was scheduled for him. If he wins this fight, he'll get a promotion at Susanow's event. The protagonist doesn't believe that Keisuke's school is the fighting arena for that promotional night. But more important than the location, what really worries him is his opponent this time. The narrator then announces that his opponent is the C-rank fighter Sakuya Yujiya. He wonders if the delinquent will be able to break Sakuraba's fighting spirit this time. With a serious look, our character can't believe he'll have to fight this guy anytime soon. He watched the files of his past fights and noticed that there wasn't a significant difference in skill. One of the delinquent's previous opponents appears early terrified during the fight against him, but the protagonist realizes that most of them lost the will to fight along the way and senses something strange. The countdown begins and Sakuya shouts that he's going to crush Sakuraba with a sadistic grin on his face. The game begins and the delinquent advances with a weapon in hand, ready to attack with all his might. With a quick movement, our character manages to block the stick's blow with his forearm. He realizes the weapon is a retractable baton and prepares for the enemy's continued attack. The criminal yells at him to die and believes that with a surprise attack there is no way to dodge. But to the attacker's surprise, the protagonist dodges the blow with ease and precision. Sakuya attacks again, shouting that it was just luck and that it won't happen again. With brilliant footwork, Sakuraba continues to deflect all of Sakuya's attacks with agility. He analyzes the opponent's form and thinks that he must have experience with kendo and is probably a black belt. But he knows that dodging blows is now an easy task for him thanks to his intense training. The effects of his parkour training are already showing, and he's getting used to this new body. Sakuya gets annoyed and says he doesn't know what happened to him, while the protagonist smirks. But the delinquent warns him not to get carried away, just because he's gotten a little stronger than before. With a smile, he points to the school building and tells the protagonist to take a look at what's going on. The protagonist turns to look, not understanding what is happening on the other side of the courtyard. There he sees Manaka tied to a chair and surrounded by Sakuya's henchmen, who are smiling at the camera. Gagged and with a look of fear, the girl can only whisper Chan's name in despair. The protagonist stares at the enemy with a look of pure fury upon, seeing the terrible scene before him. The delinquent warns him not to say anything he shouldn't because they're at the best part of the show. So Sakuraba understands that the enemy's tactic is to take hostages and threaten them to have fun with their desperation. With a wicked grin, the aggressor praises Nanis in a disgusting and provocative way to irritate him. He wonders aloud what kind of noises she will make when he touches her in front of his friend. The protagonist realizes that this man is a sadist who takes pleasure in tormenting those he despises. He feels sorry for the boy for being targeted by a man like that, but he knows he can't let it get to him. His goal is to find the organizers of Susano, and he won't let something like this stop his progress. With a determined look, he prepares for action, telling himself, here he goes. The delinquent lunges to attack, but the protagonist doesn't move to dodge the blow with the stick. The gun hits him squarely in the head, and he wonders what the hell he's doing standing there. With his forehead bleeding, he realizes that his body has disobeyed his command again and becomes confused. The aggressor laughs and calls him a good boy, saying that Manaka is important to him after all. He tries to move but can't, and wonders if his body is rejecting his will. He remembers the same feeling he had when he confronted Sakuya's henchmen earlier at school. He understands that to protect Manaka, there is only one person who could do something like that and control her body. This person is Manaka's childhood friend and the original owner of the body he is occupying. The image of the real Keisuke Sakuraba appears in his mind, revealing the internal struggle for control. With this, he no longer has any doubt that Keisuke's consciousness is still alive within this body. Sakuya boasts and says that if the boy kneels and begs for forgiveness, he might accept his surrender. But the protagonist's eyes gleam with blue energy, and he faces the enemy fearlessly and with a defiant gaze. The delinquent gets irritated by his attitude and lunges forward to attack, yelling at him to stop being so cocky. With a flurry of blows, the attacker strikes the protagonist squarely, who is unable to defend himself from the attacks. The narrator wonders what's wrong with Sakuraba, since he can't do anything against Sakia's attack. The fight scene is streamed live on a cell phone, showing the protagonist being beaten without reacting. One of the henchmen shows the video to Manaka and says that everything happening to him is her fault. With tears in her eyes, the girl thinks about Ki-chan running away and feels powerless because she can't help. The delinquents laugh at the situation and order the girl to stop struggling while they hold her down. One of the henchmen looks the girl up and down with a serious and somewhat strange expression. He is recording everything with his cell phone, documenting the suffering of the girl tied to the chair. The others warn him not to do anything because Sakia told him to wait, but the man says he wants a little taste first. Another henchman agrees, saying that they only get the leftovers after the boss has had his fun. With that, one of them decides they'll have some fun first and starts untying the girl's ropes. The man approaches her with a malicious smile, and Manaka realizes what they are about to do. Suddenly, the girl breaks free, removes her gag, and attacks the men, screaming that this can't be happening. She then runs to the window in a desperate attempt to escape the delinquents surrounding her. One of them calls her an idiot and says there's nowhere to run, because they're on the 4th floor of the building. With a sickly grin, the henchman says that forcing a girl who is trying to escape is exciting for him. Looking down, Manaka wonders what she can do in this hopeless situation. Afraid of what is to come, the sight of the height terrifies her, but she knows she needs to find a way out of there. One of the men decides he will be the first and approaches the girl with a lecherous look. But Manaka jumps out the window and grabs onto a pipe, and the men yell for her to stop because she might fall. Hanging there, she feels fear but knows she needs to use the pipe to climb down and escape that nightmare. Meanwhile, Sakia continues to beat the protagonist, who doesn't react to the blows and appears defeated. From afar, a spectator watches the fight broadcast on his laptop with a worried expression. Seeing the scene, he wonders if it will all end like this without him being able to do anything to help. Inside the protagonist's mind, he communicates with Keisuke and says that he knows he's there. He understands that he is the true owner of the body, who is hindering the movements to save Manaka. The agent admires his determination but asks if he truly believes Sakia is an honorable man. Lying on the ground, our character faces the enemy who is preparing to deliver the final blow and end the fight. He admits that he feels bad that a dead man stole his body as a whim of fate, but he asks the boy to lend him his body for a little while longer to resolve the situation. Surrounded by a blue aura, he vows to protect what is precious to Keisuke in the name of Geist. At the last second, the protagonist moves and blocks Sakia's attack with his hand, surprising the aggressor. Sakia becomes furious at the reaction and shouts, asking if the boy is challenging him with that look. Lying on the ground, he thanks the body's original owner and promises to keep his word. Sakia is furious at the turn of events and shouts that he won't let this go unpunished and will go after the girls. At that moment, a desperate cry echoes through the place, and the protagonist turns around, startled by the noise. It is Manaka, who is hanging from the pipe of the building in danger, calling for help in great fear. With that, the boy looks to the other side and sees the girl in trouble, wondering what she is doing there. Despite the pain and injuries, he prepares to act with a look full of determination. Without wasting any time, our character starts running at high speed towards the danger. With a Parker move, he uses Sakia's body as support to jump with blue energy. The delinquent is completely shocked by his agility and doesn't understand what just happened. The protagonist then runs along the wall and uses the momentum to continue his path with mastery. The narrator is impressed by his speed as he runs across the connecting walkway with agility. With an impressive leap, he throws himself into the air towards the other building in an act of courage. In mid-air, he stretches out his hand and manages to grab a white rope that was hanging on the building's wall. But soon after, he realizes that it's not a rope, but a fire hose that he's going to use. Suddenly, the pipe Manaka was holding onto broke, leaving the girl in trouble. With the pipe broken, The girl begins to fall towards the ground, screaming in pure terror. Using the stick he took from the enemy, the protagonist manages to attach himself to another pipe along the way. With precise balance, he lunges towards Manica and catches her in mid-air before it's too late. He holds her tightly in his arms, and they both seem shocked by the last-second rescue. Manaka calls him in surprise, and the boy reprimands her, saying that she is a very reckless girl. He lands on the ground with the girl in his arms, and they both seem a little dazed from the fall. Securely on the ground, Manaka stares at the boy with a worried look, and he stares back at her with determination. Sakia and his henchmen are shocked to see the two alive, and the delinquent becomes furious with Sakuraba. With a cry of rage, the group's leader orders his men to attack everyone at once. The protagonist finds himself in a 4-against-1 fight and wonders if he will be able to protect Manaka in her current state. One of the men lunges forward with a punch, and the protagonist prepares for the surprise attack. With a swift movement, our character dodges the blow, and the man shouts in frustration at his miss. Suddenly, Mukai appears and knocks the delinquent down with a punch, surprising everyone with his arrival. He stares at the other men with a defiant look and says they ruined a 1-on-1 fight. The narrator comments that an intruder appeared in a street fight and that the battle turned into total chaos, with Ahud and his hands bandaged. Mukai asks what's going on there, ready for action. The protagonist is surprised by his presence, and Mukai says they can talk later. One of the henchmen is undeterred and advances with a knife to attack the former boxer by surprise. But with a powerful punch, Mukai easily knocks him to the ground, showcasing his skill. Another man attacks from behind and demands that he hand over the girl, Nanis, with a menacing look. The protagonist turns around and hits him on the head with the hose, knocking him out with a single blow. He then turns to Mukai and tells him to grab Manica and get out of there as fast as possible. But the girl refuses to go, saying it's reckless for him to fight them all alone. Suddenly, Mukai grabs her arm, and the girl screams in surprise at the man's unexpected action. He then starts running with her and tells the protagonist that he will do what he asked and take her to a safe place. The protagonist faces the remaining enemies and tells Mukai that he owes him one for helping him. Manaka shouts to be released, saying that if things continue like this, Kei will be in danger. But the former boxer apologizes and says that she will only get in the way if she stays there in the middle of the fight. He goes on to say that if she truly wants his safety, then she should focus on getting out of there. The girl is speechless and asks who he is and why he was there to help them. He replies that he owes Sakuraba a small favor and that his opponent has a bad reputation. The scene changes to Mukai at the gym, drinking water and preparing for another intense workout. Sitting on a bench, he looks at his cell phone with a surprised expression on his face. He is watching the live broadcast of the fight and realizes that something is very wrong with Sakuraba. He noticed that the boy wasn't trying to dodge Sikia's attacks, so he went over there. He takes Manaka to his car and says that, as he suspected, Sakia was using dirty tactics. Inside the car, the girl begs him to go back and help Ki, because it's very reckless to fight alone. But Mukai apologizes and says that Sakuraba's request was to take her away safely, and she cannot return. With a smile, he says he's not worried about the boy, because he knows he's stronger than he looks. Back in the fight, one of the henchmen yells and lunges forward with a bench to attack the protagonist from behind. But our character stylishly dodges the blow, and the man falls to the ground from the impact. With his eyes gleaming blue, he turns and faces the enemy with a cold, focused gaze. He dodges the punch and lands a powerful knee strike on the man, knocking him out with a single blow. Suddenly, another henchman advances with a knife in hand to attack the protagonist by surprise. The protagonist uses the bench as a shield and blocks the knife attack. The attacker tries to punch the bank, but the protagonist uses the force of the attack against himself. With a powerful kick, he throws the man backward, knocking him unconscious on the ground from the force of the blow. The narrator praises his agility and decisiveness, saying that Kizuke Sakuraba is no ordinary man. Seeing all his henchmen on the ground, Sakia yells angrily and calls them useless trash. The protagonist turns to the delinquent and says that now he is the only one left in the fight. Surrounded by a blue aura, he taunts him, saying he's injured and challenges him to try his luck. He goes on to say that without his hostages and subordinates, the enemy is just a coward who can do nothing. With that, Sakia loses his patience and lunges forward, shouting that he will finish off Sakuraba once and for all. Our character believes that the battles so far have revealed the true limits of his opponent. He knows the provocation is cheap, but it's more than enough to shatter Sakia's fragile self-esteem. The agent knows that when composure is lost, sword technique becomes dull and easy to predict. Therefore, he prepares to execute an absolute move to end the fight once and for all. With a burst of blue energy, he disarms the enemy and strikes him squarely with devastating force. Lying on the ground, the delinquent can barely breathe and can't believe he was defeated in that way. He stares at the protagonist one last time before finally collapsing from the impact of the blow. With his staff in hand, Sakuraba stares at his fallen enemy with a look of pure satisfaction and victory. The screen then announces the knockout and declares Keisuke Sakuraba the winner of the special match. The narrator gets excited and says that the finish was with the legendary unarmed disarming technique. Two men watch the fight and are impressed by the boy's skill, finding his strength unfathomable. With all the enemies on the ground, the protagonist touches his head, feeling the exhaustion from the intense battle. With his forehead bleeding, he realizes he has lost a lot of blood and needs to treat the wound quickly. Suddenly, bright lights surround him and a voice shouts, asking what he is doing standing there. Two police officers appear with flashlights and order him not to move because he is surrounded. The protagonist realizes that the situation has gotten even worse and that he's in trouble with the arrival of the police. He stares at the men lying on the ground and wonders what will happen to him now that he has been caught. The police officers advance towards him, ready to arrest him and end the commotion once and for all. They then apprehend Sakia and his henchmen and begin interrogating them about what happened at the scene. The protagonist observes the scene with a wary look and wonders how he will get out of this situation. The scene shifts to the next day, and we see Kane leaving for work as usual at the building. Chinatsu is being cared for by a woman who apologizes for being in the middle of an important story. The woman affectionately ruffles the girl's hair and tells her not to make that sad face. She then says goodbye and mentions that the three of them will go out to eat something soon to celebrate. The woman asks Chinatsu about her brother, and she confirms that he arrived home all scratched up, sitting on the sofa with bandages. The protagonist seems pensive and a little dejected by the events. He watches the news and discovers that a criminal group led by a 17-year-old has been arrested. The police are investigating the extent of the leader's crimes, who appears to be involved in many things. With a serious look, the protagonist realizes that the news of Sakia's arrest has dominated all TV channels. He finds the speed of the media coverage surprising, but the content of the news is unbelievable. Despite being a minor, Sakia Yuji was involved in robbery, assault, and even drug trafficking. But what most excited the media was another fact that was revealed during the police investigation. Reporter reveals that the boy's father is the Deputy Commissioner General of the Tokyo Metropolitan Police. The media speculated that Sakia's father, a high-ranking official, may have covered up his son's crimes. But something seemed wrong to the protagonist, and he remembered his conversation with Mukai about the ranks. The boy doesn't understand what the ranks are, and Mukai is surprised that he doesn't know about the system. He explains that in Susanoo there are ranks from S to D, and that newcomers start at the lowest rank, D. Over time, promotional matches are scheduled based on battle records and popularity with spectators. He also reveals that when the rank increases, the treatment the fighter receives changes dramatically. The former boxer says there's a rumor that crimes committed by C-rank fighters are ignored by the police. The protagonist remembers that the police ignored him and arrested Sakia, leaving him shocked by the revelation. If the rumor is true, it means that Susanoo's administration even has the authority of the state in its pocket. This makes him wonder if the people who eliminated him are really that powerful. The reporter reveals that the teenage leader came in third place in the National Kendo Championships, but his father reprimanded him for not coming in first place, because in his elite family anything less than that was worthless. The reporter speculates that the abusive upbringing in an elite family may have been the cause of his crimes. Chinatsu approaches his brother with a worried look and calls him by name in an affectionate way. She asks why he's watching TV with such a scary look on his face, and the boy turns to her. He smiles and says it's nothing, trying to hide his true concerns from his younger sister. The girl complains that she was calling him and says that Manaka came to pick him up so they could go to school together. At the door, Manaka calls him over and greets him with a somewhat awkward "Good morning," given the situation. Walking together, she asks if he's all right and thanks him for saving her the previous night. Manaka then asks about Mukai, the boxing club coach, with a smile on her face. She explains that he was the one who took her home, and the protagonist feels he needs to thank him. The two continued walking in silence for a moment, with a slightly awkward atmosphere in the air. Suddenly he stops and apologizes, leaving the girl completely surprised by his attitude. The girl asks why he's apologizing and says that it's all Siki's fault, not his. He admits that he involved her in this carelessly, but says that giving up on Susano is not an option. The girl confesses that she was scared not only by what the men did, but also by seeing him being beaten. She worries that he might leave if he continues with these fights, and that distresses her. But she understands that he is serious, because this is the only way to save Chinatsu.